I think that some of the advice that you had given when you spoke on the Writer's Mindset podcast was focused more on you've written your book, you've done all the good things that we've been talking about. It's out there, crickets, or maybe it's not crickets, but it's not the full blown that you were hoping for. So we're now looking at a scenario where the authors put their first book out and it's not meeting their expectations. What kind of advice do you offer there?
Give up. No, not really. No, well, like I alluded to earlier, it might not be you as a writer. It might just be the marketing side of it, the branding side of it, like you say, the business side of it. And the assumption really when people first turn their page to writing is you're probably not business minded. You're focusing, as we have been for the first part of this interview, on primarily the story itself and just trying to write the story that you want to write. And what I see a lot of with first time authors is very specifically something that I call their heart book. So often the reason that I see people drawn to the page is because there's a story that's been lingering in them that they've wanted to tell for ages, or just this real romantic notion of, I want to have written a book. I want to be a novelist, and that you want that achievement, that title, that book on your shelf, which again was kind of my dive into it. And your story and your idea of what you think you want to write tends to take precedence over what would be, and I'm going to sound quite clinical here, but sort of like traditional business and marketing practices. Like you jump into that story. My first novel that I wrote, I released like a novella that was a short horror novella. But my first sort of novel sized work, I can't tell you what genre it was. It was a mix of thriller. There was a bit of supernatural in there. There was a tiny bit of horror. It was just all over the place. And there's a reason that that's never been released. But it was a story that I just wanted to tell at the time. And I was just adamant that I had this story to tell and I wanted to get it down on the page. And so that kind of tends to be the approach that a lot of first time authors make is like, I've got this story, I'm going to write it. And you don't think about genre because you don't really know about genre. You don't really think of subgenres. You don't really think of, what platforms you're going to market it, where you're going to place it, like what your author brand's going to be, all that kind of stuff, because it's about the story. Like writing a novel is hard enough in itself without worrying about all that other stuff. And I often tell people that work with me that when they're working their first novel and they're like, oh, should I be doing this? I'm like, no, shut up and write the story. Write your story. That's the key thing. Nothing else matters until you've written this story.